Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Heather Wolf. So Heather, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
Well, I am Heather Kearsley Wolf, and I live in Sonoma, California, and I own a company called Kearsley, which I founded in 1999, and we launched in 2001. And we make ethical, environmentally friendly, luxury linens that are some of the best in the world. And our main thing is caring about the people who make our product and the people who are buying our product and the environment. So it's a really luxurious experience, and I've loved it. It's been a crazy run.
Awesome. So in terms of your business, I'm curious in terms of more of the backstory, like how did you get the idea to go ahead and start this business?
Well, I'm an interior designer, and I was doing interior design on a pretty epic scale as far as residential interior design was concerned. And I had studied construction management as my undergraduate degree at Cal Poly SLO. I was very good at project management and moved to Chicago, did some project management, and it just wasn't ticking all of my boxes. You know, it was getting like half of myself was covered with that. And I went to one of our friends' moms was one of our classmates' moms was really phenomenal interior designer in LA and working on big houses and lots of celebrity houses. And I asked her if I could come follow her around for a week. So I went out and to LA. I was living in Chicago, as I mentioned, and fell in love with it. And, you know, it did help that it was West Week at the Pacific Design Center. And it was back in the day when there was like amazing parties. And she somehow managed to get me into a dinner with, you know, John Saladino and Barbara Barry and Bunny Williams and Barbara Olson, who I was working for, literally like my second night of looking at interior design. And I thought, wow, this is great. I mean, that was pretty rarefied air. I went back and started getting my master's in interior design and continued to work for Barbara, sometimes remotely, sometimes there, and learned so much from her, far more than I learned in school. But what I did learn in school was important. There were several things I didn't know. Lots of classes I didn't have to take because of starting in architecture at Cal Poly and taking lots of extra art and architecture just for fun. So we ended up moving to Arkansas, and I was the only licensed, at this point I was a licensed interior designer. I had passed the NCIDQ exam, and I was the only one. And I was doing these huge houses. And one of the fun things about the South is the houses don't cost as much. And so they have a lot more money to spend on the interiors. And it's a bigger priority. And the craftsmanship down there was amazing. And they were very into bed linens, as had Barbara Beckman been. And my family's always been in textiles, never bed linen specific before this, other than like, you know, home, you know, the ladies embroidering pillows and such. So we have lots of heirloom, beautiful bed linens. So we got bigger and bigger. I moved back to California. I was working in New York and California, and I was designing everything for my clients' homes: tiles, light fixtures, mirrors, like furniture, you name it. I was designing it all, carpets. And I couldn't find what I wanted for bed linens for my clients. And I was doing what most designers do. And I was going to the design center, which I love. But I was buying fabrics that were too heavy, didn't breathe right, couldn't be laundered easily. And to create what my clients needed. And a couple unhappy clients later about not being able to toss their duvet cover in the wash, I realized that there really was something missing. I had already done such a deep dive into linens, and I couldn't find the base point of this was I couldn't find beautifully made bed linens for men. There was lots of linens that looked fabulous in photos, but when it really came down to it, they were inferior quality being marketed really well, except for a few exceptions. And one of those companies is now closed. I had bought a beautiful pillow sham in Florence in 1994, and I knew whoever made that could make my pillows. So at 29, I was blonde at the time. I could barely speak Italian. Like I could order food, was about as far as I could go and be polite. And there was no GPS. And so in 1999, set off. One of my clients, who was also a friend, offered to cover my monthly nut, which was a major pivotal point. I don't think I could have done it without him, because we were doing so many interior design jobs. I had a large staff. I had big rent. I had lots of overhead, and he offered to cover that so I could leave for 8 weeks. Like, we did not know how long it was going to take. So I got on the plane and flying to Germany from San Francisco, and I was in business class, and the flight attendant came and took our drinks, and I was so excited. And the woman next to me was like, "Where are you going?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to Italy." And she said, "Oh, you must be going to see a man." And I was like, no. So I told her the whole story. So we leveled off a bit, and the flight attendant came back with our drinks, and the woman next to me, it was named Jan, cheers me and said, "I have the cell phone number for the woman who owns that factory." And so by the time I landed in Frankfurt, I called her. We switched my flight. I no longer was flying into Malpensa in Milan. I went to Bergamo. They picked me up, and within 10 days, I had 3 collections fully designed. I had some strike-offs of weaving, which is phenomenally short turnaround. I had embroidery strike-offs. It was amazing. And we were off to the races. And I came back, and we had yet to really build the business plan, because this was just going to be something I added on. And then once I really realized the implications of manufacturing and doing custom fabrics and all of this, I realized how much money we needed to raise. And I sold my house in Squaw Valley, which is now Palisades, but I was able to really purchase that initial down payment on the fabrics. A dear friend of mine came back, one of my gymnastics teammates who had been national champion for rhythmic gymnastics 3 times and had just retired at 27 for being such a phenomenal saleswoman in post-production in Hollywood. And she was on a beach in Turkey, and I'm like, "Okay, you got to come back. I need your help. I need to figure out a sales structure for this." Because that had never been I had never sold to retail stores. At the time, the whole model was that boutique lines like ours sold to boutiques around the country. And they were, for lack of a better term, kind of mom and pop. Lots of them were interior designers who also had a shop. And Tasha really figured that whole thing out. And then we launched officially in Dallas in May of 2001. Sorry. It was so much fun, and we did really well, and proceeded to expand into other showrooms. Meanwhile, I was working on a business plan and trying to raise money. And I was a 30-year-old at that point. I was 30 years old, and I could not raise money. I mean, it was just call after call after call after call after call. We didn't end up raising any funding. So I sold the house I had built to flip in Sonoma anyway. My plan was to rent it, but I needed more cash than that. So I ended up selling it, and I've been bootstrapping really ever since. I've had a few friends come in time to time when we needed some funding for, an event or two. But we went out to raise funding a couple times, and divine intervention, it didn't work out. And then for example, we were about to be funded in kind of epic style right before the 2008 crash. And my entire business model would have failed, because the entire business changed in those 2 years. To survive, I ended up consulting for some companies in Asia who wanted to do luxury stores, bedding, and mattress companies. And that saved us, and also made me some really interesting connections with other high up brands. We've never manufactured for Kearsley in China, but I was just there consulting, and really met a lot of people, met a lot of Chinese manufacturing, learned who of my competitors are actually manufacturing in China, and then shipping it to Italy to be packaged and labeled and sold as made in Italy in the US. I learned a lot. I learned how to negotiate at the markets. It was really cool. We had opened a store in London prior to that crash as well. And so basically just a lot of learning. We'd done a lot of the trade shows. And at this point, we've come up to the point of we're raising money, and we want to do a factory, cut, sew, and embroidery factory here in Sonoma to complement what we do in Italy, be able to have shorter turnaround times, do smaller, very custom orders, and have some stock on hand fast when we need it, when we know what we need. So now we're raising big money. So that's kind of the cycle of where we've been. We're 25 years since we were incorporated in a couple next week. So
yeah, exciting. So I guess in terms of right now, right, you mentioned that you're raising money, but In terms of your business, right, who is your kind of ideal customers today?
They've stayed the same. We sell to a lot of interior designers, and we're launching a hotel collection that will be ready in about May. And so now one of our focuses is purchasing agents and interior designers who do hospitality management groups. But the bulk of what has sustained us, honestly, yes, we do linens for some very wealthy private individuals and families, but the bread and butter for us has been individuals like middle and upper class incomes who really just want one or two great sets of sheets to sleep on that are healthy for them, that will last, that they can feel luxurious and have a great night's sleep. And sadly, about 80% of what we sell is just plain white sheets, even though we market all the fancy things, but they're all really, really beautifully made of beautiful fabrics and a variety. So we've just had clients of all sorts of shapes and sizes and ethnicities and locations, and it's been a lot of fun.
So how have you gone about? I mean, I'm sure it's changed over the years, but as of today, how do you kind of go about marketing your business and reaching out and getting new customers? Like, have you run ads? Is it more just word of mouth? Like, what does, that process look like?
It's been interesting, I have to say, especially with social media and watching like who's coming in from what. The vast majority of our sales are referrals. And one of the issues with our product is it lasts 10 to 20 years. And so there's not a lot of replacement, which would be, is more other people's business model. So we will be adding more product. We're switching to doing a lot of online sales now, which is the first time ever. And that's still very much under construction, pricing still being adjusted, collections are still being organized to be loaded. One of our tricks there is we don't have a lot of the photography we need because every set we make so far has been custom. So trying to create collections for our website and have adequate photography has been a little bit of a challenge. We've worked with some rendering, but it still adds up to be a lot of money. So I'm curious to see how AI might be able to help us with that. Although right now AI just makes up whatever it wants. It doesn't specifically put your linens on a bed, which would be fabulous. And I think we're getting there, but we're not there yet. And really looking to, now that the website's almost ready, we're really learning how to market better to social media. Like we really have not used Pinterest. And I know we've gotten some business from Instagram. We only have like 300 followers, but some of them have become pretty substantial clients. And Facebook definitely, people just following along. And I think our newsletter has become our best tool for selling to our existing clients, just reminding our existing clients we exist and what we're doing new. So it's it has been nothing official. Like I'm our marketing department.
That makes sense. So in terms of your goals, right? You mentioned obviously one of the things is getting some new SKUs out there, but I guess besides that, what else are you kind of focused on here, for the rest of 2025?
Yeah, 2025 is a plan of substantial growth. So we're looking to buy a building and build out a store. And most of 2025 will be construction. As soon as we buy the building, it will be construction on that end. So building out a cut and sew, embroidery, distribution center, warehousing here in Sonoma Valley, and making it a real destination so people can come and learn how this stuff's made. One of my goals is to make sewing cool again. It used to be in all the schools, and it's very, very important for people to know how to sew. And I have a whole talk I do launching into like national sovereignty. Sovereignty doesn't exist unless we can weave in industrial weaving and we can sew for ourselves. And right now, the prior were great at big things. But the Revolutionary War could not have happened unless Slater's Mill had the technology it had, because we couldn't weave the uniforms and the tents before Slater's Mill happened. And so textiles was the reason that was allowed to happen. One of the reasons that could happen. Other than that, so I really want to bring it back and do kind of like Mr. Rogers style. The kids can come through on field trips and see the factory, see how it's done. We're going to be doing an academy, which all couture houses do, like Brunello Cucinelli and Chanel and Dior and all fabulous houses have academies where they teach the sewing technicians who are coming in, who are interested how to sew the way we need them to sew. And, whether or not they stay with us, that's another question. They may end up going off and getting other jobs, but it's really about getting sewing back, and we're going to be working with the local high schools. Some of them in Broner Park have sewing, but really need to bring that back. I mean, people graduate from high school who can sew and they can get a job, and it's like $25 an hour to start. So, that's a good job for someone who has a high school education. And so many of the schools around here are focused, because of our tourism, on restaurant management, teaching people to be bus people, kitchen backs and bar backs, and you get paid a lot more and you work 9 to 5 being a sewing technician. So that's one of my visions, and it's really bringing some of our sewing back here. So that's what I'm working on this year, with plans of opening boutiques around the world starting next year. The hotel collection launch is our biggest thing we have going on this year by far. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And then I guess if you can go back in time, right, to before you got started, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
One, I wish I had found help to put together a better business structure for us to work from, because we, for a very long time, operated on a series of jumping from one opportunity to the next. And because we didn't have great systems in place, we weren't able to capitalize on lots of the connections that I made. I'd go to an event, we'd be in Florida or Newport, Rhode Island, or France, or Monaco, or wherever it was, London, and I would meet all these people, but we didn't have the systems in place to back me up and really bring those people into the fold and have them really learn about why we're so great and become customers. And that was a lot of, every one of those experiences taught me a ton, and I met wonderful, great people I'm still friends with who are still customers, but that could have been done a lot better. I think that's the biggest one. The other one is stop pushing so hard, just allow it to work and enjoy the process. Like, there's been so many days where I had to be like, there's so many times when we didn't have money and I hadn't been paid. I had to address the fact, is this what I want to do? Is this my vision? Is this the path to my higher self? Yes. It's always has been yes. So I've always had that behind me. And I think if people get to those points where it's super hard and you ask yourself those questions because they're so important, if you ever have a no, stop and do something else, because it's, even when things go well, things are hard again. All you have to read is books like Shoe Dog, and there's so many out there where it's just, there's always massive challenges, no matter how big you are. I think a lot of small businesses think, well, if we just had more sales, if we just had more money. And as you know, that's not necessarily true. That doesn't solve. You have to have the systems in place. You have to have the right team lined up. And that's a tricky juggle. Great people are out there and interested. Lots of people are interested in this, what we do, because of how ethical we are and the quality of what we're doing, and my vision of, really improving the industry overall, and honesty in textiles, et cetera. But having the positions lined up for those people to come in, and then having the capital lined up for them to come in and really do what they do, has been a challenge for me. And the original idea was that I was never going to be CEO. I was going to be the chief visionary officer, president, and lead designer in those initial years. And I've been the CEO now for 25 years. We were still here. So I've done some things right, but I'm really excited to be in this next phase, stepping off of CEO and, being on the board and being president, and really getting to play with our clients and being out there in the world and sharing the product with our people. Because designing the product, being with our clients, and being out in events with potential clients and partners, we have a lot of great industry partners. That's my favorite part. So
Awesome. Well, Heather, yeah, that's really good advice. If somebody watching this wanted to reach out to you or wanted to buy your products, you mind sharing your social media or website, just best ways to get in contact?
The best way and most simple is Kearsley Home. It's KEARSLEYHOME singular.com. You put an S on the end of homes. It's a construction company in Oregon. So let's not do that. Social media wise, Instagram is at Kearsley Official. Facebook is Kearsley Linens. And I believe LinkedIn is Kearsley Linens as well. And I have a blog, which I really recommend people read. It's for everybody, just about lots of things in the industry and dispelling myths about certain things. And I usually post those on LinkedIn. So lots of people don't subscribe to our newsletter that follow me on LinkedIn. And then the people that subscribe to our newsletter, are from different sources. So subscribing to our newsletter is a great way to do it. And you can do that from Kearsley Home. And for interior designers, they can go into the trade part of our website. In the menu, there's an interior trade. They can click on that and register for trade. And once they're registered for trade, then we give them a login and they can look at our digital sample book. They can look at our embroidery colors. They have all sorts of support that they get with that sign up. And obviously I'm an interior designer, so I'm coming from supporting the interior designers as the perspective of an interior designer. So I think that's the best way to reach us. There's always Kearsley at kearsleyhome.com is the best informational email to reach out to us. And we do everything custom. We organize it for, are you a hot sleeper? Are you a cold sleeper? What is your laundry like? Where is the house located? What kind of, I help them sort out how they're caring for their laundry. Our care section on our website is fabulous. It has downloadable PDFs in English and Spanish. It really breaks down like how to take care of your linens. You don't have to have Kearsley linens to refer to that, just so your things last longer. And everything we say about your linens pertains to your clothing too.
Sounds great. Well, Heather, thanks so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course.